Hey guys, and welcome to this fourth tutorial within our series for an advanced inventory system within Godot 3.1. In this tutorial, we're going to be looking at adding a graphical loot chest to our game scene, to which we can link our loot panel and from which we can loot stuff in the future to our inventory. While we're adding this loot chest, we're going to have a close look into the collision and detection physics within the Godot engine and how you can use that to really give that loot chest a presence within the game world, but also how you can add functionality like interacting with that specific loot chest when you get close to it. For all that, stay tuned and let's start coding. Now, as always, we first have a quick look at the game assets that I've added to our inventory tutorial and what I've changed within Godot to help get this tutorial along. For our game assets, I've added two new images, one a chest facing the southwest, and I have added a menu ring, which is a black ring with a transparent background that I'll be using for our graphical user interface within the game scene. As for Godot, I have created a very basic 8-directional player scene with the player being represented by a Godot icon. I chose not to show this on camera as this tutorial series focuses on an inventory system and not on a player control system. I will be making a series for that in the future, but then much more extensively. If you want to create something basic like that, I'll sure you'll be able to find a video for it on YouTube. As for other changes that I've made small adjustments within our folder settings. Now we have a folder for scenes to which we'll add our main scenes, and that folder has a subfolder called subscenes, which is then underdivided into the different scenes we'll be creating. Scenes are, for example, our inventory and loot panel that we've already created in previous episodes, but also the player scene that I've just demonstrated. Now we can start by adding our chest. We create a new scene, a 2D scene, and let's rename this to chest 1. And we are going to be adding a sprite to denote. That sprite is going to be having our chest image that we added to our tutorial, and we'll be saving this scene within the map elements, as a loot chest is an element within a map. Now we want to be adding this chest to our game scene, but before we start talking or adding it to an actual game scene, let's just quickly go over nodes and scenes and instances within Godot, as it works a little bit differently than most other game engines, and it's quite important to follow this tutorial to understand what I'm doing. When you have a game, you usually start with Godot with a sort of game root scene, as you see down here. We've created this in tutorial number 1, not with the exact functionalities that it should be having in the future, but we have a game root. The game root basically starts at the startup of the game, and it will control what the player sees first. It will load the first scene. You can think of your game as consisting of different chapters. For example, you might have a main menu when the player starts the game. It is in a town, sort of a home base, or maybe on a planet if you're making a space sim. And from town or from the planet, they can select, okay, go on an expedition or adventure, quest, mission, you name it. And that may load a map scene. Now, the town will be a chapter within the game, and the map scene or the map would be a chapter within the game. So you want to create those scenes separately from each other, and you want the game root scene to be handling, adding, and removing those scenes from the actual game, so that the game only loads the resources which are necessary to load for the player at that moment in time, thereby not lagging your game or draining the battery of the device if you program for mobile, or putting too much strain on a GPU or a CPU while the game is running. So for us, we have the game root, we have a chest, and we want to add that chest to the map scene, which is, let's say, a chapter within our game. So let's create that map scene, and again I'm making a 2D node. And to that map scene, I'm not going to add the chest that we've created as a map element within separate nodes, I want to copy the scene that I just created and copy it several times into this map scene as an instance. Thereby, I'm saving myself a lot of work, and I could decide in the future to program where the chests should spawn in different locations based on different maps. So I'll be linking, when I press the link button over here, I'm not adding a child with the plus, but I'm linking an existing scene. I get an overview of all the scenes available within the game folder, and I'll be selecting the chest and I'll be opening this up. I can select the chest, and with Control-D duplicate, I can add several instances of that scene that we just created earlier. And I can move these chests around. Now also, I can add the player scene that I've demonstrated earlier, and then we can save this map scene under our main scenes folder, and we can hit play. Now we suddenly have a game scene, which of course doesn't have any art or background or an environment yet, but we have our chest and our player all together now. And as you can see, I can move around the player, but the chests are of course just images, and that's very bland. They don't feel like they make any part of the game world. It doesn't feel lively at all. We can just literally walk over our chest, and that's where collision detection comes in, and that's what we'll be adding next. To add our collision detection, we're going to go back to our chest scene. As you can see here, when you have opened different scenes recently, they pop up here on top, and you can very easily switch between them. Any update you make in the scene that is linked to several instances, and you can see it's an instance scene by this icon over here. Any changes I make here are automatically updated in this scene as soon as I save this scene, which is also saved when I press the in-game running the game within the editor. So on this chest scene, we are going to add a new node, which is going to be no, not a collision detector, a static body 2D. Now the static body 2D will give a warning immediately because it requires a collision shape or polygon. As I'm working with isometric art a lot, the shapes don't work out that well for me very often, so I'm quite used to working with polygons, but we'll be using a shape in this tutorial as well, so you can see how that works too. With that collision polygon 2D, you again get a warning. This time not because you still have to add another child, but because you have to add the actual polygon to the game. So on our chest, I'm gonna be creating a mask for about the ground. You can drag and drop these icons, by the way. If you want to delete one, you can just select it and hit delete. And when you press your mouse button over an existing line, you add a new one, and then you're able to drag it out again. So I'm making a mask over where the chest would hit the ground, and I'm adding that as its collision shape. Now if I run the map scene again, remember, pressing that button automatically saves. I run into this chest. I can keep pressing the keys, but from every side I am hitting that chest. Of course, it doesn't just work on the image of the Godot image. The player scene also has a collision shape, and the player itself is a kinematic body 2D. So they both have a collision detector, and they collide, thereby stopping the movement, or stopping that they can continue moving. So with that done, we now have a more lively part of the game world kind of chest. Now next up, we want to be looting these chests when we get close to them. So we need a way to let the game know when we're close to a particular asset or to a particular chest. We don't want the moment we start the game to have 17 pop-ups if we have 17 chests, like, do you want to loot this? To do this, we're going to go back to our chest, and to our chest we'll add another node. And in this case, we're going to be adding a area 2D node. Now again, you get an error because this one also needs a collision shape. And this time we'll be using the shape instead of the polygon. Again, you get a warning because you need to set the shape, and in this case we're going to set a new circle shape 2D. Now this is a little bit too small, so we'll be dragging this out a little bit so it will detect anything that walks into this area. Now we wanted to detect when somebody walks into this area, but we don't want it to collide with it like we did previously. Because of that, we have used the area 2D instead of a static or kinematic body 2D or rigid body 2D. The other bodies have collision functionalities within them. The area 2D only has detection functionality, so it's a little bit different. What you do want to do is to set the collision parameters of your area 2D. This is very important because if you would place, let's say, a chest next to a tree, the tree will have a collision detection because you don't want your player to be able to walk through the tree. But if the tree will be within this blue circle, immediately the game will, the chest will hit a detection signal because the tree is within its detection radius. So you want your tree and your chest's detection circle to be separate from each other. To do that, Godot has collision layers, and that's right here in the inspector. So our player is currently in collision layer number 1, and I believe in number 2 as well. We can quickly check that. Yes, the player is currently in both collision layers. So we're going to set our static body to be in collision number 1, and we set our area 2D to only find collisions in layer number 2. Now, if we put our trees and our buildings and whatever else we put on our map as elements in either layer 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on, as long as we don't put it in layer number 2, it will not trigger the detection for the chest, and it will only be able to trigger when the actual player walks into it. With that done, we can not test this yet. For that, we need to add signals to this collision detection, to this detection circle. We do that by selecting the area 2D, going to node and going to signals. You can code the signals, and actually by using this signals interface within the editor, it will create a little piece of code for you as well. I find it quite easy because you immediately have an overview of all the available signals, standard available signals for this particular node. You can add your own custom signals, which we'll be doing in the next episode. In this case, we have a body entered and a body exited signal readily available on our area 2D node. So let's use that. We're going to connect this to the chest. It's going to give us a, oh, that didn't go as planned. It's going to give us a suggested name. This suggested name is fine, and we're going to hit connect. Oh, that's a very important one. You can only connect something to a scene which has a script. So we have to be adding a script to the chest node to the node, and then we can connect our body entered to chest 1. We accept the suggested name, and as you can see, it opens the script editor for that particular chest number 1, and it adds a function on area 2D body entered. Now we're going to do the same for that area 2D, but then on exited we connect that as well, and here we go. Now to test these functions, we can simply print 2 names we have a entered and a exited. Now on the map scene, we can test this. As soon as we move down, when I drag this away, you can see here within the output of the editor, it shows entered and exited as we programmed. We can use those signals and connect them to other game nodes to work with that. For example, create a pop-up or create another user interface trigger. What I find quite common as I develop for mobile mainly is that on my graphical user interface, I want to have an indication of when I've entered the detection area of a chest by changing an interaction icon. You see this very often in mobile, and you'll recognize what I'll be adding right now. First, I'm going to be adding a canvas layer, if I can learn to type. There we go. And a canvas layer is basically a container node that will have all your user interface elements. The canvas layer is automatically sized to your entire viewport, thereby you never have to worry about resizing. So it's a perfect container node to handle all your user interface items. So to that canvas layer, we'll add our map scene controls. Oh, I'm very sorry. I have to add the child control first. And we'll be renaming that to map scene controls. And on the map scene controls, we're going to set this to full rectangle, which will automatically be the viewport as it's taking the full rectangle from the canvas layer. To that map scene control, I'll be adding a texture button, and to that texture button I'll add a texture rectangle. I'll be renaming this immediately. This is going to be our main UI control, and this is going to be our main UI icon. Now our main UI control within the inspector with expand on, I'm going to be dragging our menu ring to the normal textures, and I'll be setting the size, the standard size I want this to be. I want this to be 175 by 175, and I'm going to set this layout to the bottom right. With that set, because we grow or we draw this node out from the bottom right, I want to set its grow direction not from the end but to the beginning. By doing so, I've basically defined the beginning of this image not to be the top left corner but to be the bottom right corner. And now with margin, I can increase its margin and placing that icon nicely in the middle. What we're going to be doing in the next episode is that when the player gets close or gets into one of this detection radius, with expand on, we'll be adding a gold icon, full rectangle with a little bit of margin so it doesn't overlap our black ring. And this is a little bit too strong for me, so I'm gonna be decreasing the opacity a little bit. So what we'll be doing in the next episode is that we are gonna be programming the signals not to just print some text here in the output of the editor, but we're gonna link it to this canvas layer, and it will handle that signal as a event that will open or will pop up this this gold icon, thereby indicating to the player, look, there's something to collect here. This is something of interest. This could, for example, be an exclamation mark when you get close to an NPC with a quest. This could be a question mark when there's maybe a quest item or something to be explored within the game world. This could be a sort of tunnel icon when the player finds a cave. You name it, you can set up with signals, you can set up that this icon is variable based on what the player is finding or interacting or detecting. And you can then link that signal up to the elements, thereby if the player would press that button, because we have created this as a button, it will call the function that has to open at that point. So in our case, when our player is going to be entering the detection radius of the chest, the icon for gold will pop up. If the player presses it, our loop panel will pop up that we programmed in the last episode. Thereby, we can start creating an interaction between chest, loop panel, and of course, after that, inventory when we actually loot the items. But that's all future talk for the next episode. I've considered programming that what I've just talked about right here, but the fact is that we're going to be adding so much more signals in the same episode next time, and I thought it would be a good idea to put all those signals together into one episode and make a signal tutorial which will be part of this series. Thank you all for watching. This was a little bit of a short tutorial, but that might be good, might be more easily to digest. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments below, or of course find me on Twitch. I'm live every Tuesday and Thursday in the evening European time. American times are down in the description as well. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, smash that like button, hit subscribe, press the bell notification icon so my next video pops up in your mailbox. It will be online next Monday. I'll see you then. Have a good one.